Damn. How long has it been since I last talked about the anime? Shit. The eponymous Cappies of Cappytown are not the brightest bundle of folks. They're constantly under fire in the community for being uptight, belligerent assholes at almost every waking moment of their lives. And if they're not being blasted for just how mean-spirited they are, especially towards Kirby, they're being blasted for just being so goddamn stupid. And for once, I totally agree. Yeah, I bet you weren't expecting that one. But just because I agree with everyone giving them shit does not mean that I hate them. Quite the opposite, actually. And it doesn't make me better than the haters either. No, I simply love them in spite of their flaws, and I don't let their insufferable actions bog me down. Most of the time. I could try to sum up my pure and honest view of them, but nothing I can say would come close to being as succinct as this Anon on Tumblr, who sent an ask to the user Lavender Birch Trees, calling Cappytown a village of people pure of heart and dumb of ass. Couldn't have said it better myself. Bravo, Anon. It's important to write characters who suck, but it's even more important to write characters who suck but are otherwise fun and lovable. Mostly for the sake of the viewer's ability to perceive nuance and depth. And especially if the fact that they suck sometimes is a method of social commentary. The Cappies are a massive bundle of that type of character, and it's not just the lovable sides of them that deserve much more recognition than they get, but also the more tragic aspects. Every Cappy has a story to tell. Well, most of them do. And perhaps in that case, it'd be best to start with the ones that don't. Little rapid-fire riffing to start us off. Biblio is the owner of Cappytown's bookstore, and it is comical how little screen time this man gets. Out of all 100 episodes, he only appears in 30 of them. And of those 30 appearances, only 10 of them have any dialogue, most of which is just one line per appearance. He has never once contributed meaningfully to any episode, not even in his starring role in a novel approach. He is only here to engage in bits, fill up the background, and be the victim of a toilet gag that didn't even pass the American censors. If you can believe it. Doron is Cappytown's one and only criminal. He's always being holed up in the police station, only ever spending time outside of it whenever Chief Bookham isn't there, or is otherwise preoccupied. He has no dialogue in the Japanese version and rarely talks in the English version, even during his one significant leading role in The Thing About the Ring. Any time he spends out of jail is spent committing theft. He's still more important than Biblio, though, at a whopping 9 extra appearances. Wow, staggering numbers here. While not a Cappy, Dr. Yabui is a central figure in town who largely gets lumped into the Cappy group by proxy, similar to Chef Kawasaki. The reason why he isn't a Cappy is never addressed, but let's be real, he's one of them by heart. Yabui would be the only doctor in town if Escargoon didn't have a doctorate of his own, but Yabui is the only operating doctor. Escargoon's doctorate is probably in law or something. Almost every single role that Yabui undertakes, no matter how big, is inside his clinic, not counting his appearances in the finale. They range from minor infractions to full-body fractures, from hay fever to morbid obesity. And for most of his minor cases, he frequently gives really bad suggestions, like telling his patients to avoid pollen by not breathing. He's a certified quack. Literally, that's what his name means in Japan, based on the term Yabuisha, which literally translates to bush doctor, but is colloquially used to refer to bad doctors or quacks. Part of this quack designation includes his tendency to break the lesser-known clauses of the Hippocratic Oath. Do no harm, sure, but also don't leak the personal information of your patients. Yabui has no concept of confidentiality and often points out personal traits he's noticed in his patients, whether as part of a diagnosis or not.
The doctor told me it's too salty.
You're too salty too, Curio.
He will say it to your face. He does not care. He will be blunt, he will be accurate, and there is not a damn thing that can be done about it once it's said. Despite these blatant violations of privacy and dignity, however, Yabui remains a strictly professional man and has no significant relationship ties with any other member of town. That doesn't stop him from appearing in crowds, though, which makes up for the bulk of his time spent in a tertiary role. He's a curious man. Yabui's leading role is much less personal than that of any other resident of Cappies Town, it being the episode that begs you to practice good dental hygiene. It has nothing to do with Yabui as a person, and merely uses his profession as a scare tactic, frequently combined with horror-adjacent close-ups, torture devices, and long, drawn-out screams. As such, there's never a moment when Yabui has his time in the limelight. Always a vehicle, never the driver, never in the view of the headlights.
May I turn that off? Put on the next track.
The last ones that I'll put in this small starting category are the three Cappy kids. Talking about them is difficult, not because of information scarcity or ambiguous writing, but because the dub changed how these characters were named, and not in a good way either. Their original Japanese names, Airo, Hani, and Hohe, are a play on the first 6 characters, or mora, of the Japanese poem Iroha, which has been used to order kana characters in the same way we order the Latin alphabet through song. And in a similar vein, the Iroha is also used to identify notes in a musical scale. But in the dub, this wasn't localized properly. Shocker, I know. Ideally, the kids might have either been named something like Abby, Cody, and Jeff, as in A, B, C, D, and E, F, or to fit with the musical context, something closer to Dori, Miva, and Sela, as in Do, Re, Mi, Fa, and Sola, as a way to carry over the pun. But instead of anything clever or funny, what actually happened, well, it'd be better to just show you. Hohe, the third in the original linguistic lineup, became Iro. It's not spelled the same way as the actual Iro, being spelled with 2 O's to stress the length of the syllable, but the pronunciation is similar. The Japanese Iro then had his name changed to Spikehead, a complete non sequitur nickname based solely on his appearance, which, granted, does happen a lot, but now the previous naming convention is completely erased. Hani's name was basically unchanged, now spelled and pronounced like the food honey. I couldn't tell you why this swap was done, and I don't want to assume carelessness or ignorance, though I am not ruling it out. Now, just so we're all on the same page here, I'll be referring to these 3 by their American names, as that's what I'm most familiar with. So, anytime I say Iro, I'm talking about the one with the shirt and the sun hat, not Twiggy Pineapple do over there. Iro and Spikehead are similarly mischievous and childish in their temperament, mainly differing in their talking styles. Spikehead is more blunt and direct, while Iro, being the oldest of the 3, is able to put more thought behind his words. Usually, this manifests as Iro being the instigator for most of the misconduct performed by them, and Spikehead telling off anyone who says they're doing something bad. Honey is the shy one, who is a lot less willing to engage in the tomfoolery of her friends, often butting in with a fraught and guilty conscience when she does participate. Despite their differences, the 3 of them remain good friends, and Honey and Spikehead end up developing a small and barely elaborated crush on each other. These kids are most often seen around Tuff and Kirby, and thus, they don't ever become a main focus of any one episode by themselves. The closest they get to a leading role is episode 15, Kirby's Pet Peeve, but even that isn't too significant. Almost all of their relevant moments are a part of something bigger, orchestrated by Tuff. But while they don't have a lot of plot significance that we see in the show, they still serve a very necessary function. a bigger friend group for Kirby. I'll elaborate on this idea further if I ever do an analysis on Kirby himself someday, which I am planning on doing, but how Kirby is treated by people is a two-line graph. Going up and down the y-axis determines whether or not you like Kirby or you hate Kirby, and going from left to right on the x-axis determines whether or not you treat him as a warrior or if you treat him as a baby. You can basically put any character on this graph, including monsters, but the three Cappy kids fill a very important role, being in this top right quadrant here. It's very important, considering Kirby's age, that he has some avenue through which he can have a normal childhood. A normal kid's life, full of friends and fun and formative experiences with people who care about him. That's what the Cappy kids are, and that's why they aren't very active in Kirby's adventures, besides, you know, being young kids themselves. Helping Kirby fight monsters isn't something they want to spend their time doing with him. So a lot of the screen time they would get would be in a filler episode, where we just get to see these characters existing without any threat of a monster. But Right Back At Ya is formatted as a Monster of the Week show, and that format knows no concept of a filler episode. Even with episodes that would be filler episodes normally, the writers find a way to shoehorn in a monster, even if that monster just ends up being King Dedede. So, the Cappy kids go mostly unrecognized by the camera, but their efforts aren't in vain. After all, the time difference between episode 1 and episode 51 is exactly 1 year, meaning that only 14% of the entire year is plagued by monster attacks and corruption. A lot is happening behind the scenes that we aren't privy to, and most of the time, Kirby is out having fun with these guys. So thank them. Thank them for keeping our hero happy and healthy. Alright, no more hogwash. Time for our first real candidate. Chief Bookham is the town's chief of police, and only policeman. It's up to him and his trusty revolver to keep the streets clean of, you know, one guy. But I promise you, he takes his job very seriously. It's tough work, you know, running a jail cell that's only moderately more useful than the one in Tasmilly Village. Being a cop, he usually butts in to state the legality of whatever activity is currently happening, or to provide his insight on where the perpetrator in question deserves to stay the night. Hint, it's a jail cell. I feel like on some level this must be his idea of a joke. It's clear that he doesn't do a lot around town and that Cappy Town is very peaceful when a monster isn't attacking. The guy must be bored out of his damn mind. But okay, I've had my fun giving him shit for his profession. Let's talk about the fun stuff. For starters, he's the only Cappy in town who changes voice actors in the dub. For the first 3/4 of the series, he's voiced by Jerry Labozo, who gave him his signature gruff tone. However, for the final 25 episodes, he's voiced by Andrew Rannells, who gives an okay rendition, but you can tell it's a different guy if you listen close enough.
Kirby? That's ridiculous!
I can't figure you out. If you were as go-getting about work as you were about crime, you'd be rich. I know.
It's also clear that this new VA is the same one that 4Kids used for their non-diegetic narrator character that routinely shows up. Rannells' take is a lot more nasally sounding, whereas you can tell the Labozo version spoke more from the throat. At least that's how I'm assuming it was done based on how I do my impression. I tried to research why this VA shift occurred, and the only lead I could find was Jerry's IMDb page, which seems to suggest he left the 4Kids team in 2003 for greener pastures. Wouldn't put it past him. I've heard horror stories about the kinds of things that went on during those sessions. Bookham also takes the second place slot for most censored Cappy, since a lot of his scenes were cut in the English dub due to his less than disciplined trigger finger. However, the curious case of this is that we have a remnant that passed through. For a brief, and I mean brief, section in episode 21, A Princess in Distress, Bookham can be seen in the crowd of DDD and Commander V's duel. And when DDD pulls out his cheap trick, we cut back to the crowd, and Bookham is now brandishing his special issue for all the little kiddies to see. How scandalous! You should be ashamed. I can't believe you! It's pretty safe to assume that this was either a complete mistake that the censor team missed, or they kept it in just for the sake of keeping Gangu's line and just hoped no one would notice. Either way you slice it, that's funny as fuck. The final point of note is that Bookham is actually a bit of a budding singer. Practicing, but he's going places for sure. I mean, I just bought his new single last night. Here, have a listen.
Lock up my love. Your heart's in jail. I'm in for life. I can't make bail. I'm all alone here in my cell. It's without you. I feel like hell. Oh, lock up my love.
It's great, isn't it? Oh, the wonders of open mic night. But it's not just this one scene that shows his talent. When DDD brings education to Dreamland, Bookham is appointed as the school's music teacher. This show honestly has whack continuity. The writers will reference the smallest detail from a dozen episodes in the past, but the bigger moments are left to the wayside. And speaking of bigger moments, I think it's time we talk about the crux of the Chief's character arc. Bookham, unfortunately, has his main episode very early on in the show, which, if you know how I feel about Tough, isn't a good sign. Which is a little funny, because Tough is also a primary focal point of this episode's plot. But I've talked about Tough at length already. What's going on with our pig? Well, he fell asleep on the job once, caused an accident between the only two people in the kingdom who drive cars, and was subsequently fired for it, since he wasn't able to decide who was at fault for the crash. Or more accurately, because he wouldn't listen to the king about the mayor being undeniably at fault. Riveting, I know, but this is DDD we're talking about. He could have accused the police chief of jaywalking
your favorite word.
and still gotten his way. Is this even really a problem? Does Cappy Auto Insurance even exist at all? Why are we even having this discussion right now? Whatever. Regardless, Cappytown will soon no longer have a police force, and this is a problem because Cappytown is totally full of crime, guys. Like, come on. The chief has to come back. Or at least that's what Tough thinks. Tough looks up to Bookham because Bookham straight up lied to his face about being a part of a military group called the Rough Rangers in his youth. A group that never existed and never could have existed due to him also lying about a war that never actually happened.
We never even had a war.
Whether this was done as a scummy recruitment tactic, a petty clout boost, or just a genuine inspirational mock-up, we don't know. Though to me, it comes off as the first two, and Bookham probably tried to frame it as the third. What a real piece of work. It's enough to get Tough on the chief's good side, though, because now he and his Cappy posse are out committing all kinds of petty crimes to get the rest of the town to realize how important Bookham is. Plumbing sabotage, vandalism, false advertising, assault, theft, fraud, DUI, breaking and entering, solicitation, armed robbery, shoplifting, aggravated assault on a police officer, and more. This eventually leads to the rest of Cappytown siding with Chief Bookham when DDD comes out with the legal order to take away his badge. But before anything can be resolved, some fuck shit happens, and Tough gets abducted and winds up in the boom and doom of... Oh, God. I am so fucking tired of you, I swear. I'm sorry. I can't... Fucking... Look! Look, I'm sorry. This is so fucking funny to me. There is no possible explanation why. Bookham is then forced to prove his bravery. He climbs into the scalding caldera of the Boomaduma volcano, completely unprepared, but aware of the dire circumstances. Eventually, during the perilous climb to freedom, Tough comes clean about his misdeeds, rebuffed by the chief's admission that he was never a serviceman. But the reason why he isn't a serviceman is different depending on which version you watch. In the English dub, he says that he tried to join the Rough Rangers, but they didn't accept him. In the original sub, however, he says that it was his brother who became the Rough Ranger, and he never joined at all. Very weird and incidental line to change. It doesn't even affect his character that much, it's just interesting. Ultimately, it's this moment that cements him as a true hero, not just a figurehead of some nebulous and twisted justice system. We can come to many conclusions about the true nature of his lies, the falsehoods he spreads about his past, no matter how white the lies truly are. Perhaps he was trying to convince himself, just as much as everyone else, that he was worthy of respect and honor, despite not actually having anything to show for it. But this is something that wipes those lies clean off the board, because he did something no other police officer would have done. His fucking job. It takes bravery and determination to do what he did, something very few among the townsfolk would have the guts to do. You don't need a military background to do something like that. It comes straight from the heart. That's what separates good cops from bad ones. This cop, he's a good one. But we're not quite done with Bookham yet. We gotta talk about his wife to get the full picture. Buttercup, loving wife to the chief of police, puts on a lot of hats throughout the series, even if only briefly. Like a lot of the Cappy women in this show, she falls victim to the stereotypical trad wife life, unable to be her own person, and instead being relegated to the secondary mention of another, more well-known character. But obviously, in the early 2000s, this was commonplace, and it's the few times that Buttercup gets to shine that break the norm. For one thing, her role in the first Schoolhouse episode implies that she is a skilled mathematician, and directly shows that she often takes up the mantle of teacher when no institutionalized education is present. This scene also shows, if some assumptions are made about artistic credit, that Buttercup is a competent illustrator. Maybe it was her who drew those specific frames of Dee Dee's cartoon. She makes up the first of a routine gossip circle with other women of the town, Hannah and Mabel. We don't see it happen very often, though, which is a shame. I would have loved to listen in. Things must get pretty juicy in there. And finally, roll your eyes with me here. She's a good cook. A masterful one, even. And she knows how to decorate a front lawn with tasteful Japanese amenities. But then, what does the inside look? Oh my goodness! Buttercup's biopic begins one fateful midday with an unceremoniously broken window, the final in a chain of dozens. Like a lot of her fellow village people, she's not the best at keeping her home in tip-top shape. But unlike the rest of the village, her awful hoarder home is broadcast on live television. And naturally, despite sharing a home with someone else who should have equal say in the condition of the home, it's all her fault that the place is such a dumpster fire. She's the fucking stay-at-home housewife, for fuck's sake. That means it's up to her and her alone to keep the house clean. Otherwise, she's a failure. Even the motherfuckers who we've seen the dreadful home conditions of are scolding her. What, you're exempt from blame just because you aren't married, you make a 5-figure salary, and you are too old? Fuck that. All three of you are just like her, and none of you have any right to talk. Hypocritical bums, the lot of you. We learn from direct testimony from both Buttercup and Chief Bookham that it's not her fault. It only got this bad because Bookham kept bringing in more and more items from the lost and found, insisting that they be kept rather than thrown out. It's textbook for hoarder homes, being unable to say no when asked to hold on to things for later. I should know. I live in a hoarder home myself. It's not easy to watch as the person or people you love just keep bringing in more junk, always saying they have a use for it, even though they never do. Piling up useless item after useless item, always hoping that they'll find a way to get rid of them or reuse them for something later down the line. But they never will, and you can't stop them, so now it's your problem! Okay. I know I'm already going on a wild tangent, but as I'm sure I've already spelled out for everyone, this is personal to me. But that's behind us now. The next thing I want to talk about is something pointed out to me by a mutual on Tumblr who helped me proofread my script for the Tough video. Thanks again to her, by the way. The exact language used in the dub when talking about the mess was heavily tweaked. The terms pack rat and slob are basically only present in the dub. The sub used a lot more language referring to self-care, empathy, and other such things like that. On one occasion, Sub Escargoon directly calls Buttercup inhuman for the state of her home. And this dialogue change fundamentally altered the entire narrative of the episode, though perhaps this one was understandable. Of course, there's that selfish executive reason that showing an episode about hoarders would drop ratings and lead to some very angry phone calls, but also, kids won't understand this. They don't know what a hoarder's home is like unless they live in it. And the more direct path of using terms kids might be more familiar with, like slob, would work better to drive the secondary message of keep your home clean much better. Ideally, a perfect version of this episode would find some way to balance the two aspects of the script. Drive home to the kids that tidiness is important and that they should clean their rooms, while also tackling the harsh treatment of hoarders as failures and slobs, instead of as people who desperately need help. In this way, Buttercup can be unveiled as who she really is. A near-perfect representation of someone who, despite their outward appearances, is silently struggling every day. A neighbor whom you see at the store, or in the park, or walking down the road, who would never be able to talk about everything going on at home because they're afraid of what people might say. She's constantly walking on eggshells, but in a way, she's also laying more eggs by her feet to step on, constantly working against herself, because asking for help like that is scary. The proof is right here. At any moment, she could drop the mask. She could come clean about how dirty her space is. But what will others think? It's safer to keep up appearances and just hope no one ever finds out. Because that kind of embarrassment, that kind of shame, is dreadful. So how does her story get resolved? Kirby just cleans her house, and by extension, the homes of everyone else in town. That's it. That's all she needed. Someone else to step up and take care of the mounting problem before it can get any worse. Sidestepping all of the judgment, all of the ridicule, all of the turmoil and shame. Just an act of selfless kindness. Next up is our first section that has two Cappies grouped together. Far from the last, because there are a lot of very explicit pairs in town, and sadly, not every Cappy gets an episode all to themselves. The first half is Gangu, who owns the toy store in town. Not only does he run the toy store, handling the many orders and shipments needed to stock the shelves, but he is also a toy manufacturer / toy maker himself. As far as I know, the ratio of imported versus manufactured toys in his store is never stated, but I can imagine it's at least half and half. Making toys yourself does wonders for shipping costs, but it's also clear that toys are his passion. He also has a lot of work in general repair and tinkering, being able to soup up a toy race car into a real vehicle, and creating other makeshift vehicles to combat some bikers. Easily translated skill, I assume. Being in the toy business, his work has a lot to do with emotion and feeling. As such, we see that he is a very empathetic man, who can easily place himself in the shoes of others and understand their point of view.
I wanted to make Kirby another pet, but but nothing can replace the friend he lost.
He's a big man with a pure heart. And though that normally comes with the downside of him being kinda dumb, I would argue he is far from the himbo type, considering his business smarts and areas pertaining to his special interest, for lack of a better term. He's quick to jump onto new fads and trends whenever they crop up around town, assuming he wasn't one to make them. Cappy Town gets obsessed with ninjas? You can bet he's got a whole lineup of ninja memorabilia in stock. And when a new energy drink suddenly shows up in the middle of town, he sees one person's reaction to it, and now he's throwing out campaign slogans left, right, and center. And you can tell he's good at it because he never once drinks it himself. The other half is Tuggle, who operates the town's grocery store. In contrast with Gangu, Tuggle is very one note. We don't glean very much information about him. He just runs his general store all day and then goes home. He's a very utilitarian man in that regard. He has a quicker temper than most, though in this town that's not saying much, and is often direct and blunt. He doesn't sugarcoat things. He tells it to you straight and doesn't care how it'll make you feel.
So, bag boy, does Kirby shop here often?
Well, often enough, I'd say.
He pilfers here all the time?
Well, it seems to me he hangs out in the snack section an awful lot.
Being the owner of the general grocery store in town, he has a lot of minor interactions with basically every single other Cappy, engaging in their requisite banter. However, it would be a disservice to gloss over a particular interaction he has with Kirby. In episode 59, The Meal Moocher, Tuggle shortens his trash load by giving Kirby all of the food items in his store that are set to expire. This is the only time we explicitly see it happen, but it can be inferred that this is a somewhat regular arrangement. Somewhat.
Tuggle, there's rotten food everywhere!
It's past the expiration date. I gotta get rid of it somehow.
When it comes down to putting both of them in the same room, it's clear that they riff off of each other pretty frequently. And when they're not doing that, Gus is usually there to fill in the gaps. It's the male equivalent of the Gossip Girls, Mabel, Hannah, and Buttercup. The last thing about these two that I have for you is a fun fact. In both of their first appearances, episodes 6 and 4 respectively, they have a completely different color palette. Gangu receives this gray, orange, and white color scheme. It's giving TF2 achievement icon. Yeah. Maybe Gangu is a gamer? Tuggle, on the other hand, just has the normally green elements of his outfit replaced with a supple tan color. Like desert camouflage. So we have a nice, mild-mannered toy maker and a slightly gruntled but focused store owner. Could these guys really do anything malicious? Not by themselves, no, but you'd be surprised what happens when fate deems you worthy of collaboration. And it starts with blatant pollution from both of them. Late at night, they just decided to dump a bunch of their poorly selling products out in the middle of some field and hope nobody would notice. Dudes, it's in the middle of a field. People are gonna find it. You ain't slick. Rather than dumping their bum products, Tiff suggests they find a way to combine the two bad products into one good product. And the result of this joint venture? Kinder Surprise eggs. Like, literally, that's exactly what these things are, just without the box. Except these are arguably even worse, because the toy inside wasn't put in any kind of secondary protective layer. No, it's just loose under all that chocolate. And for those who don't know, Kinder Surprise eggs are illegal in the US. The Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act concludes, as a part of the 10 chapters that make up the act, that any foods containing embedded additives that are not edible are considered an adulterated food, their words not mine, and illegal to buy, sell, or what have you. And anyone who violates this restriction, knowledgeable or not, could see a fine of anywhere from $300 to $2,500 for just one egg. This is not an issue had literally anywhere else in the world. Like, I know the phrase only in America is usually said with some level of plausible deniability, but no, literally, this is only a problem here in America. A problem that can be easily prevented if parents just took better care of their children. What a joke. So, from an American perspective, Gangu and Tuggle have created a highly illegal contraband product and are now pawning it to kids and grown-ups alike without any legal repercussions whatsoever. And that's not even mentioning the clear gambling implications in both the premise and marketing of this toy, which directly parallel the gachapon industry in Japan. Tiff routinely scolds the two of them for making and selling these clearly malevolent toys, and each time they provide some kind of excuse and dodge accountability, saying this was her idea, in favor of pushing this fad to its absolute limits. Coincidentally, the next day, a new wave gets introduced. And now is where I get to mention that all of these figures are depictions of Star Warriors. Some we've met, some we won't see for a while, and some we know are already long dead. This whole aspect of the product line, including why they didn't sell very well on their own despite the apparent popularity of the Star Warriors, is never explained. At all. Not even when Meta Knight is among the figures depicted. He just finds that shit hilarious.
I like that. Ah, yes.
Whatever, bro, I'm leaving you a 1-star on Amazon, idiot. By the third wave, however, the toys go from socially reprehensible to outright physically threatening, as Nightmare Enterprises tips its hat into the ring with a surprise shipment of monsters in disguise. This leads directly into part 2, but the second episode ultimately ends up being one 20-minute long fight scene. Gangu and Tuggle aren't even given any dialogue, they just become background characters fighting off the figure monsters, and then appear in the crowd watching Kirby do all the work. Or, excuse me, Tuggle ends up in the crowd. Gangu doesn't even get that luxury. Ultimately, the main figure, no pun intended, of blame ends up being completely shifted, and the original subject is left basically unresolved. However, I'm here to play devil's advocate, and I raise you this question. What if the decision to neglect Gangu and Tuggle and instead place the brunt of the issue in DDD's hands was intentional? And not just in the sense that DDD is the main villain, so he needs to be the orchestrator of everything, but in a deeper, commentative sense. It's been made very clear throughout dozens of episodes now that the writers of this show believe very strongly that capitalist and consumerist ideals are reprehensible. And while, yes, the working men who allow such things to be sold are at fault, the issue has much more to do with the government. Were it not for the constant pressure of capitalist society, events like this wouldn't even be allowed to happen in the first place. Making DDD the main focus is essentially the writers saying, hey, these guys aren't in the right, but they only did it because the big man upstairs incentivized this behavior. He's the one you should really be mad at. And with this reasoning, I can make a lot more sense out of this decision, but that doesn't change the fact that Gangu and Tuggle walk away from their big episodic adventure completely unresolved and unpunished. The only two Cappies to do so. We walk away from Snack Attack with the understanding that both Tuggle and Gangu are scummy bastards who will recklessly feed into any fad that makes them heaps of money, no matter how harmful it may be. And aside from DDD waltzing into their operation and using it for his own nefarious purposes, nothing is stopping them from doing something like this again. No statement of wrongdoing, no accountability taken, no desire to change, nothing that says we won't do this again. Not even a we'll be more careful next time, which would be the bare minimum for a situation like this. And that really sucks. Gus is the sole operator of the sole gas station in all of Cappytown. A hotbed of activity for the two people who actually own cars. But when you're as gruff and tough as this country bupkis, you can get away with doing jack fuck all every day. It's not often that you see him acting out due to his usually reserved nature, but when you get on his nerves, he'll be sure to let you know. Another result of his reserved nature, he rarely ever talks. Seriously. Out of 71 total appearances, 27 of them contain no dialogue whatsoever, and that includes the times he's been hypnotized and has no other dialogue outside of that, because really that shouldn't count. Included in crowd mumbles, and included in one episode where his only line is buying like a sheep. That's over a third of his screen time where he doesn't talk at all. And even when he does talk, it's not a lot. It takes forever for this guy to open up, I swear. Most of the time that we do see him, he's at work waiting patiently for either the mayor or Dee Dee to pass by for a fill-up. Or on the off chance one of them needs a spruce up. He's much more willing to stay in the crowd, commenting and complaining rather than getting down to business. The few times he does open up, he makes a passing mention of his singing career, his country roots, and his overbearing fondness of sushi. And as mentioned before, he's on good terms with Tuggle and Gangu, frequently joining them for lunch. But aside from that, Gus does not have much of a life to go off of. He's a simple man, and we can't exactly fault him for that, now can we? Much in the same boat, though likely a wooden one compared to Gus's metal, Melman serves Cappytown as its one and only member of the entire postal service. He sends mail, he receives mail, he delivers mail. He even has his own strict code of ethics.
That would violate the Melman Mailman Oath.
He's also the oldest Cappy in town, a fact frequently used as leverage for Melman's many complaints on the matter. He can always be seen walking with a cane, an accompanying slouch, and eyes that are obscured by his oversized eyebrows. He fills up the expected role of cranky old man, which includes crankiness, an aloof demeanor, and a spotty moral compass. Hell, he tries out a fancy-smancy new energy drink, and the first thing he does while coked out of his mind is hit on the married women in the square, rightfully earning him the title of pervert. Melman is frequently the butt of jokes involving motor vehicles, often getting run down by them. Yet, even in his old age, he's resilient enough to take them on without a major hospital visit. Quite a far cry from the usual stigma of the elderly. Our youngest and our oldest. Normally, they want nothing to do with each other, and for the most part, that rings true here. Gus and Melman don't exactly interact ever. But they each have one claim to fame, and their paths draw closer than one of them believes. In a somewhat rare act of restraint when it comes to character arcs, Gus and Melman are tied for taking the longest of any Cappy to receive their specific plotlines. And I think it was a pretty baffling decision to make, but sure, whatever. Born to be Mild, the two-part saga that involves these two tells us that Gus used to be a delinquent biker, running with the notorious Fang and his very grassroots gang. As roughhousing biker gangs are wont to do, they roam the streets looking for any other gangs to race and or brutally cripple. Egos inflate, victories are had, and eventually they make the mistake of thinking they're tough enough to challenge a master in his field, Steppenwolf. And they got their asses kicked, naturally. With the dirty fangs sufficiently scrapped, Steppenwolf gives Gus a stern talking to.
What are you trying to prove, kid?
We want to prove we're the best, that's all.
Really? Well, all you two prove to me is you're not real bikers.
Oh!
You think being a biker means being nasty and hurting innocent folks? It's not. It's about something else.
Yeah, what?
Freedom.
And it breaks Gus's spirit so bad that he quits the gang on the spot and vows never to ride again. And he would have made good on his promise too, if it weren't for the unceremonious return of Fang to Cappytown. Lots of things happen on the night of Fang's arrival, including the information that he's here to defeat Kirby, which was cut from the dub, making the scene where he suddenly transforms into a wheelie all the more confusing. Look, I know Knuckle Joe did a very similar transformation in his first appearance, but we knew from the start that he, on some level, is working to fulfill the wishes of Nightmare Enterprises, knowingly or not. Fang in the dub has no idea who Kirby is before riding into town. The most that's given to us is the chemical analysis done on his bike's fuel, and frankly, that's not enough. And you know why? Because that line was altered from the sub too. Whoa there, honey. Sorry to burst your bubble, but I gotta come in here to correct something. I'm not lying when I said that this line was altered, but it's a little more complicated than that. Let's walk it through. The dub line has Tiff reveal that Fang's fuel is otherworldly. Couldn't have come from this planet. It's short, simple, and immediately establishes that Fang is likely a villain, even if the next line from Meta Knight didn't outright confirm it. The sub goes into a bit more depth though, saying that Fang's bike has been modified to increase horsepower by maxing out the exhaust concentration. Cursory research tells me that this is likely referring to the waste chemicals produced and exhausted from the engine. Most of them are harmless, like nitrogen and carbon dioxide, but some toxins can also be released in small quantities, mainly nitrogen oxides and, if your gasoline was old enough, lead. This implies one of two things. Either Fang is using leaded gasoline, which by the time this show was airing had been completely phased out and banned for use in motor vehicles for about 5 years, or he's deliberately driving without any DEF fluid in his bike, letting all that carbon monoxide run amok in the atmosphere. Neither of which are immediately obvious just from this line. Maybe if you were into cars, you'd get the connection, but I am a laywoman and know nothing about this stuff. And I doubt many kids would catch on either. I never even considered the sub could be written poorly. Maybe I'm a bad person. Anyway, back to your 30th public freakout, girl. You got this. I swear, every time I read into the differences between the sub and the dub of this show, I just get more and more baffled and frustrated by these pointless changes that try to make things interesting, but only succeed in making everything so confusing. This video is going to be several hours long already, and I'm just dragging it out longer because all these stupid localization changes are rage baiting the fuck out of me. Look, there's an even worse one. You know how in the dub, when Gus gets captured and thrown in a dungeon, he's still going on about his vow? The vow that he already broke? That was another localization edit. The sub instead has him racked with guilt and blaming himself for getting everyone else caught up in Fang's bullshit. For God's sake, man, why did any of this need to happen? Ugh. Anyway, where was I? Oh, right, Fang's return. DDD arranges for Fang's gang to challenge the residents of town in a massive racing competition, where if he wins, he'll get to stay in Cappy Town for good. And the Cappies get their asses kicked, naturally. At least until Melman lights a fire in Gus and convinces him to break his vow to Steppenwolf and stop Fang, which he does with the help of Kirby and the eponymous Steppenwolf. The ending reveals what should be obvious if you've stared enough beards. Steppenwolf's true identity is Melman, meaning we have a crown to bestow upon this curmudgeon for local unassuming badass. But this isn't something that Melman wants getting around, no. So Gus ends up none the wiser. So, with this being the first two-part episode where both parts are significant to the plot at hand, we have two parts to unpack here. Each detail is equally important and equally telling. The primary tale is on Gus's end, of course, with him being the vehicle, no pun intended, to explore themes of guilt, respect, growth, and reform. He's deeply ashamed of his past, riding around and associating himself with bad actors who took his spirit and the spirit of others for granted. It's tough, walking into a space thinking you know what it means to be a part of it, hanging around people who have it all backwards and taking it at face value simply because you don't know any better. What Melman Steppenwolf taught Gus that day was that Fang's idea of being a biker was warped. He only cared about authority, the notoriety, that feeling of power over others, and the feeling that you can do as you please and answer to no one. In reality, that's never been the goal. The biker lifestyle is a form of counterculture, a resistance against the oppression of everyday life under tyrannous rule. To be a biker is to shout to the rooftops that I don't give a fuck about the rules put in place, and I deserve to live my life with the freedom that I was promised. But Fang only ever saw what was on the surface. A bunch of tough guys in cool outfits who ride cool bikes and do whatever they want. An attitude like that is a one-way ticket to becoming a convicted felon. Or getting yourself killed. Whichever comes first. Gus was able to recognize that. And in a traditional sense, you would expect a story like this to end with Gus continuing to ride, but with a reformed perspective that challenges him to unlearn the cycle of violence. Instead, he feels a deep-seated grief for all the harm he's caused. He's unable to forgive himself for what he'd done, no matter if someone else pushed him to act out such deeds. And so, he hangs up the helmet, afraid to don such a rich part of his culture now that it's all been shocked. I can only imagine all the memories that would flood back to his head anytime he put that helmet back on. All the people he's likely put in some kind of critical condition, or maybe even killed. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But when Fang returns, and Gus is forced to get back on his bike and ride like he'll never see a road again, it becomes a tale of overcoming instinctual repression. How can Gus expect to heal from his past if he isn't willing to confront it? If he keeps avoiding it, he'll just wallow in his own self-pity for the rest of his life, always looking inward to see someone he doesn't want to be, someone he no longer respects. And he'll kick himself constantly. But when push comes to shove, he's willing to do what it takes to overcome his past and put it to rest, figuratively and literally. And that's the attitude that comes naturally to a real biker. And as for Melman, he likely has to live with a similar kind of guilt, though not nearly to the same degree as Gus. Unlike Fang, Steppenwolf is largely regarded as a hero, with his many good acts done in the service of the people, all while remaining anonymous. And as with all good vigilantes, plenty of bad actors would love to give him a piece of their front tire. Half of Fang's motive from the start was to find Steppenwolf, and if he had a bone to pick, who can say how long the line behind him is? A man like Melman likely has a few bounties on his head, petty or not, and even if his skills are still as good as they were 20 or 30 some odd years ago, to want to willingly pick up that mantle again isn't easy. That would mean putting a target on your face, inviting the worst of the worst into every facet of your life, potentially putting those around you in danger. Ultimately, we don't know why it took Melman as long as he did to don the Steppenwolf moniker again. His motives are left for the viewer to unpack, knowing the legend at hand. In my mind, it was equal parts fear for his neighbors, a desire to keep the mystique of Steppenwolf alive, and his attachment to the cozy lifestyle that Cappytown gave him. But the greatest aspect about Steppenwolf is his belief in freedom, and how poetic it is that we have this much freedom to decide his motivation for ourselves. Mayor Len Blustergas, yes, that is his full government name, even if his surname is a dub exclusive edition, is the presiding figure of local government in Cappytown. Yet, despite holding such an esteemed position, the mayor doesn't really seem to do a whole lot. He'll represent his people by filing their complaints towards DDD, including the complaints about DDD, and he'll defer the townsfolk to Kaboo's ancient wisdom in times of crisis, which, by the nature of the phrase "in times of crisis," should tell you that it doesn't happen very often. But that is about it. He's one of the oldest Cappies in town and has the accolades and anecdotes to show for it. I mean, he's old enough to have dentures, the lucky bastard. However, unlike Melman, he's still a very lively man with boatloads of energy. Energy that manifests as eccentricity.
The first float will be the one I built. I call it Bob, 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 Boom!
But he can afford to be a little weirdo, considering that he is more than likely the wealthiest man in Cappy Town. Not only is he the only Cappy who owns a car, but he also seems to be the only Cappy who owns a home separate from his place of work. A nice villa just outside of town that houses his grandchildren, his butler, his employed shepherd, and however many dozens of acres of sheep land he has. And technically all of the sheep that he has too. Does that even count? I don't know, I'm not fucking Scrooge McDuck. He can often be seen bickering with Chief Bookham, the only other Cappy of significant authority. Arguing about who has sanctions to do what, who gets to exercise what authority, and other such things that are blatant highlights about the real-world practice of faffing about in local governments to delay the tackling of serious issues in favor of meaningless menial tasks. Sorry, not sorry for the word vomit. It needed to be said. The mayor is very significant when it comes to time in this show. As I said in the segment about the three Cappy kids, the first half of the series takes place over one entire year, starting when Kirby crash lands and ending with his birthday. But now and then, we get to see small glimpses of the less than distant Cappy past. And most of them involve the mayor, whose changing appearance provides a broad sense of time. We see him from a nondescript number of years ago, officiating the wedding of our beloved cabinet ministry while sporting a lovely set of curls. Later on, we also see him 40 years in the past, lacking his signature mustache. If Curio is the ancient historian of Cappy Town, then I would say the mayor is the social historian, the town's timekeeper. Not by any legitimate certification, and not just because of his age either. He also has a passion for photography, known to carry an old-fashioned camera in most places that he goes, often taking wholesome pictures with his wife and grandkids. Speaking of which, Hana, much like Buttercup, is generally regarded as a stereotypical one-note wife character who doesn't contribute enough in any given episode to be considered much of a character at all. She sticks around her husband, hangs out with Mabel and Buttercup on occasion, and provides no other significant role. Nothing I can say about her that I haven't said about Buttercup. Despite how little we see of her, it's clear that Hana is devoted to her husband in spite of his over-the-top energy and forgetfulness. However, as is to be expected of a relationship that has lasted as long as hers, that devotion is brought into question in a very major way. Yeah, you read the info card correctly. The crowning moment of the lives of the mayor and his wife is the racing episodes. The B-plot of the racing episode. So let's fast forward a bit. There's a lot of important bullshit going on here. We're coming up on it a little bit. Okay, here we go. So, the Grand Prix. It's happening. The date of the Grand Prix falls on Len and Hana's 40th anniversary, June 15th, which is the same day that part 2 of this saga was planned to air. And with Len being so preoccupied with entering and winning the race, Hana feels neglected and becomes irate. As Gus touches up the family car for the race, Hana begins arguing with Len, though in the Japanese version, we can't hear the first half of what she says due to the roaring engine. Gus eventually backs off enough for us to hear her beg Len not to join the race, questioning if he even knows what the day after tomorrow is. But he brushes her off rudely, causing her to storm back into the house and throw their framed calendar photo through the window, hitting the mayor on the back of the head. Skipping ahead to the race date, each racer is in their pit stop, preparing for the race. Amazing sentence. As the mayor hops into his car, Hana suddenly appears, wearing an outfit ripped straight from one of those vintage, risque, male gaze pinup ads for sports cars. she's here to join the race as his navigating assistant, much to the mayor's eventual dismay. For most of the second episode, Hana frequently forces Len to stop the car and fall behind for small, largely meaningless asides, gradually frustrating him. She cleans some caltrops off the road, forces him to get some lunch, and as the rest of the racers are close to finishing, they remain tied with Kirby in dead last, with 5 laps remaining. And Kirby has been getting fucked with up in the front basically this whole time. Some cooler Kirby stuff is happening up there right now, but we don't care about that. What matters is that Kirby eventually gets the wheel ability and uses it to quickly finish his remaining laps and take second. Yeah, second. Because that crafty son of a bitch Len got the bright idea to ride the draft kicked up by Kirby, keeping pace with him and speeding ahead at the last second to take the gold. We can all agree this is complete bullshit, right? Like, you don't need me to tell you that. After this crafty display of driving ability, the mayor is presented with the first place trophy that he was so hyper-focused on. And what does he do with it?
Oh, darling.
Yes?
I want to give you this trophy as a token of my love.
Huh?
You and I were married 40 years ago today. That's why I wanted to win so badly.
It was?
Darling.
He gives it to his wife as his anniversary gift. Because he hadn't really forgotten. He just wanted to keep it a surprise. You were still kinda a dick about it though. This is, by far, the simplest of the Cappies stories. No prevailing themes, no admonishment of bad character, nothing gained, and nothing lost. And, you know, you kinda have to expect to have at least one like this. This is the B-plot of these episodes, after all. The thing you're supposed to be paying attention to is Kirby learning to pilot a starship. This is just a fun little aside, and that's all it has to be. It's like watching a mini Hallmark Christmas movie occurring on the set of the weekly NASCAR left turn simulator. Do those even happen weekly? I don't know. We cross the checkered line of the Kirby Derby, knowing the only important tidbit about the lives of our esteemed mayoral couple. Len genuinely loves Hana, but he is not above messing with her. A little. Or a lot. For the bit. There's a lot of romance in this little town, but most of them have been going on for decades. After all, the mayor's marriage has been steadfast for 40 years now. When are we going to see sparks? When will we see the love blossom before our very eyes? Well, I'll show you where it starts, but you gotta promise me one thing. Don't judge me too much for gushing. Mabel is the resident mystic of Cappies Town. She often shows herself to be one of the more abrasive, harsh, determined, and stubborn of the Cappies, not one to shy away from speaking her mind. But that's when she gets serious. The thing they don't tell you a lot about Mabel is that she is a deeply unserious person. Much like Chief Bookham, most of her dub lines are a riff on her profession, always commenting on the predictability of whatever happens around her. But unlike Bookham, I'm much more willing to believe it's all a joke. As one of the smarter Cappies, she is much less susceptible to Dedede's antics, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, is one of the many reasons why she is frequently paired with Tiff, who sees her as a sort of secondary mentor. Her open hatred of Dedede is countered by the fact that Dedede's superstitious nature leads him to consult her services very frequently. And of course, she tells him things he doesn't want to hear, he doesn't heed her warnings, and pays the price for it. Every single time. Predictable. However, Mabel cannot predict the future. Of course, right? No one could. She jokes about it all the time, even when her predictions end up correct, but all of her predictions usually involve some outside force stepping in to make it happen. Fate works in coincidences. Her actual skill is therapy, soft talk, advice, and guidance. Through her gossip rings, she acquires little details that help her know what to say beforehand. Though I imagine she must just say some random bullshit sometimes. She's gotta. At least once. To a nobody. To a non-believer. For fun. Sammo is the town's bartender, and as such, he barely had any of the scenes past the American he garners a lot of juicy details from his patrons. Rumors, personal grievances, aired out dirty laundry, and the like. You see where this is going, right? He's a soft-spoken man, which probably comes as a shock to those who are familiar with his schlocky Irish accent in the dub, but his voice is smooth. Listen.
I hold one wish close to me heart. That Mabel will always be happy, and her wishes come true. Don't tell her that either.
Oh, is it getting hot in here? I can't say that. Oh wait, I can't say that yet. In an inspired move, Sammo funnels all of his acquired knowledge to Mabel to help her make more accurate predictions. Cute little business partnership you got there. Now how long until it gets severely unprofessional? As it stands, only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 41 episodes. Yeah, as you'll come to find beyond this point, Sammo develops a massive crush on Mabel. The kind of blinding crush that compels you to bribe kids with free soda so they'll commit felonies on your behalf for her. To try and defend her from quixotic freaks. Emphasis on try. To repeatedly take a pie in the face for her. And many, many, many more. And normally, this guy isn't a capital F freak. To everyone else, he's mild-mannered and tame. But the moment he comes within an inch of Mabel, he's a whole other man. He is the epitome of the white knight, hopeless romantic, gentleman loser type. Always acting out of line in the hopes of charming the woman of his dreams. It never ceases to be pathetic, which is not exactly a negative, but if that were his only trait, he'd hardly ever have any luck. He compounds this by being genuinely sweet, easily teasable, and a little bit of a cringe fail.
I've got one. It's a light-hearted romantic comedy with a tragic ending.
Sounds awful.
A boy and girl fall in love, but they're driven apart. The heartbroken young lad leaves his hometown. Just then the girl realizes that she still loves the boy and runs after him, but his boat's already left the dock.
Okay, a lot of a cringe fail. He's a coward. He gets super invested in shameful childish toys, and he's a decently competent trivia man. What is not to swoon for, genuinely? There's no relationship dynamic that I love more than an absolutely pathetic, cringy, cheesy man who can pull a girl way out of his league through charm alone. He may be insane, he may be overbearing, and he may be trying way too hard, but he's also literally nice. Can't say I blame Mabel, I would have done the same. And sure, that's all well and good, but most of that stuff came from either before or way after they were officially paired as a couple. Because that did happen. What was the inciting incident? You're kidding me. Storm's killing the signal.
I really hope it won't get any worse. I'd hate to just cancel on everyone out of nowhere.
Cancel what?
Is the mode
No,
switch.
shut up,
When you select a DirecTV item.
What, you don't remember? Today's the big going away party.
Oh, shit. That was today?
Yeah?
I thought that was next Friday.
I don't even know how you could forget. Because, like, Meg is literally bringing Puppy. Nobody forgets Puppy.
Right.
Step by step.
Well, Storm's gonna make it a pain in the ass anyway, but you wanna watch TV with me while we wait? It might clear up
Let's
soon.
wake up that old
sure.
house. In 3 weeks.
What? Oh God, Natty, you're sitting on the remote.
Oh
An
God, sorry.
unbelievable severe weather event.
The awesome power of water.
Opens everywhere. And not much time. Dial 1-800. Call APT for.
Nat, we gotta go.
What? Wait, Torito, where are you going?
We gotta go. There's no time. You don't believe everyone you know, do you? Even if that person was hosting a new broadcast slot with the sole purpose of predicting the future of all their viewers? Even if all of their predictions started to come true for everyone? What then? Well, I'll tell you what I'd do. I'm not much of a superstitious gal, but I know I'd start to believe everything she predicts at some point. I can parade my skepticism all I want, but it'd get to a point where I believe I just can't deny it anymore. By this point, Samuel has been sufficiently busted for recruiting the local troublemakers to help Mabel's televised predictions come true. Bless his heart, he thinks he's helping her, but just like everything else he does, it goes a little overboard. Now Mabel's got a line 2 miles long, a ton of people blindly following her every word, and eventually a spot in the ministry of Castle DDD. It's the inverse of her first big spotlight. Back then, her reputation was being dogpiled by DDD, who didn't appreciate being accosted for not building a playground. Now, everyone in town thinks she's the greatest thing since sliced bread. From vilified to vindicated to quite literally venerated. The next time we see her, she is a goddess among men, dressed in a divine garb with powerful adornments. She claims that soon, all of Cappytown and the land surrounding it will be swallowed by the tide in an end-of-days flood. She has her doubters at first, but if you'll recall, her word was bond when an asteroid came calling, nearly creating an apocalypse of its own. Thus, the command is clear. Follow Mabel, lest ye perish with the land. The entire town migrates in droves, flocking to the ends of the peninsula, looking out upon stormy waters. It's really happening, isn't it? Our world is on the brink of being ravaged by a power beyond us. But how can we possibly escape? And with the whole town looking to her for guidance, Mabel performs a miracle. A deliberate biblical parallel, connecting her to the prophet Moses, parting the ocean so that her people may escape impending doom. If it were actually coming. No, this was no more than a trick, just like everything else. And Mabel rips the mask off, calling all of her neighbors idiots before throwing her staff into the sky, ending the miracle by revealing that Tornado Kirby was behind it all.
Right! Maybe now you learn not to put your faith in such foolishness. I do not have a gift to see into the future, only to help people with their problems so that they may help themselves. I am just as Samo says. I am a counselor, that is all. Oh. It was silly of me to go on that awful television show. Predicting the future is just too much hard work.
Mabel is what I'm going to call a self-recognized charlatan. She's aware that she's peddling a lie to her neighbors, selling her simple counseling services as something larger than life. But it's through this veil of mysticism and magic that, ironically, helps to ground things in reality for some people. In her mind, if the facade of a fortune teller was really a problem, no one would use her services. But the fact of the matter is that she gets loads of customers. It's a little white lie, and it's not for everybody. That's the long and short of it. The point is that she is fully aware that everything she does is an act. But because no one else is, she starts drumming it up to prophetic heights as a dare to see how far she can take it. Her work is serious, but she is a deeply unserious person sometimes, and what good is it living in a world where you can't have any fun? But eventually, she realizes that if she keeps up the facade, she's going to attract a lot of unwanted attention from people who take her too seriously. She is no god, she is no prophet, she cannot predict the future or bend the world to her will. She's just giving you advice through the veil of omnipotence to disguise the fact that it's really just mundane therapy. She's no better than a magic 8-ball. A magic 8-ball that gets all of its information from your local bartender. Mabel's story is all about the constant internal conflict between the work being done and the way her work is being presented. What is Mabel, if not an actor? What is her work, if always taken at face value? The distance created between client and professional can lead to many unwanted assumptions, beliefs, and, in her case, superstitions. It's a never-ending battle of when is the right time to cut the music and come clean. Conversely, Samo's story is all about attachment and what could happen if you let it commandeer your actions. To live by one's heart is to be made a fool, and to love so unconditionally is as dangerous as it is fulfilling. Samo is not a careful man when it comes to love. Never has been, likely never will be. He lets his love do as it pleases, and it puts himself in danger just as much as it deepens his bonds. It's a ploy that works, most definitely because the woman he's going after is just as, if not more, silly. I hate to phrase it like this, but they match each other's freak. And perhaps that aspect is a little ridiculous. But you have to understand, everything about Mabel and Samo is just ridiculous. The last named Cappy on our list is perhaps the least offensive, but only because he's the only one who bothered to sit down and get educated. Professor Curio is a man of many hats. Researcher, conservator, archaeologist, quote-unquote museum curator, historian, paleontologist, the list goes on. Unfortunately, he's the only one who wears these hats because the other Cappies aren't very interested in his line of work. Can't imagine why. We often hear from him in expository contexts, with him being our guide to ninja techniques, pirate legends, Waddle Dee behavior, and the mythical Dynablade. He spent years of his life uncovering the history of Dreamland, Cappytown, and the surrounding areas. Considering the sheer quantity of objects that can be found in his home and the many excavation sites that we bear witness to, it's safe to say that his efforts have been very fruitful. He's practically overflowing with archaic pottery. And yet, as the earlier quotations surmise, he thinks of his combo home and workplace as not a museum, but a simple antique shop, partly because of its small size and lack of general funding. He runs it all on his lonesome, taking care of every item inside of it, which includes the nearly constant repairs that he has to deal with on account of his running gag.
This is actually a very delicate piece.
Poor guy. He's a very solitary, lonely man who often speaks in lengthy academic diatribes that other Cappies don't quite understand. And when he's not doing that, he's stammering constantly, clearly awkward in most social situations. Tack on the fact that he's the only elder Cappy who isn't married, and you have a recipe for a sad sack. But he's not entirely above being social when he gets the chance.
Yo, Curio.
His most common benefactor is Tiff, whom he sees as a pupil. Tiff regularly hangs around with him, helping him on excavation runs, engaging in the occasional chemical analysis, and bonding over their shared intelligence and love of learning. He plays chess with the mayor on occasion, and regularly hangs out with the chief and his wife. and, almost blows them up. But all of his interpersonal relationships cannot hold a candle to his love of history and discovery, which makes his greatest offense all the more heartbreaking. I've left Curio for last for a good reason, because he was the first of the bunch, all the way back in episode 8. Over the course of the episode, various ancient artifacts are uncovered around Dreamland that point not to an ancient Cappies civilization, but to a sovereign penguin descendant, not unlike our current monarch here. Tabloids, paraphernalia, and even an intact sarcophagus with preserved remains still kept inside. But Curio's discoveries and research have always suggested an old world ruled by his fungal ancestors. How can this be? He seems very upset about it. A culture shock like that would get anybody down, but Tiff reassures him by recounting something he'd always say to her.
The most important thing isn't to show your theories right, but to dig all the way to the truth.
The truth.
This tiny rock. It's more of a red flag than you'd think. Look at it. Sharp, but not jagged. Refined, but recognizable as something common at dig sites. In fact, we did dig up one at the very beginning of the episode. It was featured very prominently in Curio's hands, described as a tool used by ancient Cappies. Most people wouldn't think much of it. To me, it looks like an old arrowhead, which was made using a technique called flint knapping. At its core, the process involves breaking open a rock, usually rocks like flint and obsidian that are naturally quite brittle, and then hitting the edges of that rock with a striking tool, which can be another rock, a piece of very hard wood, or a hammer. This creates smaller flakes of rock from the initial core, which are then shaped with a much finer knapping tool, progressively chipping away at the material to eventually create a sharp edge. However, as you can see, this process results in very rough surfaces, often ribbed in a way that makes it clear how the flint was struck. This rock has no such markings, not even subtle serration on the fine edges. But this isn't a catch-all. After all, some rocks are naturally pointy and were smoothed by natural erosion, with no manual labor required. Additionally, it's entirely possible the animation team could have been a bit lazy and not drawn the stone with such a detailed, sharp edge to save time. Even still, when we first see this rock in Curio's hands, it clearly looks much more natural, pointy and smooth, but still not perfectly round or flat on one plane. This rock and the rock Curio gives Tiff later on are not the same rock. It's too perfect. Perfect in a souvenir sense. Made cheaply, without attention to detail, or, in the case that this is a real rock, given out as a look-alike. Not the real thing. And I'm willing to bet this is what Tiff noticed too, which is why she neglects her dinner and goes after Curio. Under the cover of darkness, Professor Curio hauls a massive object out of his home, kept under a tarp so heavy that it needs to be wheeled out on a cart of some kind. He drags it to the place where the rest of the DDD Dynasty relics were found, sets up some lamps, digs a hole, and places the object inside of it, which turns out to be a massive DDD statue. Tiff has been following him this whole time, and photographs the scandal in progress, showing them to Curio the morning after. Curio can't bring himself to address it. Sweat on his face, looking away from Tiff's scornful, scary gaze, stammering uncomfortably. She can't force him to talk about it, not even with the threat of telling everyone else in town. So...
Keep the picture. Think about it and let us know.
She tells him to keep it in the back of his mind, that she knows what he's doing is wrong, that she's not going to let him get away with this, unless she ends up captured. But even with that extra cushion, one look at Curio's hand tells us that it's working. Curio begins to give a rehearsed speech to his fellow Cappies, despite his conscience still weighing on him. And like a delicate vase, the cracks get bigger and bigger until the whole thing shatters. Curio admits that every single D&D artifact was a forgery, created and buried by himself. And after a failed attempt at being accosted, he explains why.
This whole deception started because business at my antique shop was bad. My life savings were spent on my research into Cappy history. I was destitute. I asked the king for help, and he said he would fund my research if I created artifacts that would make it look like his ancestors were Cappy Town's legitimate rulers.
It can't be!
Even I can't believe what I did. But here is the proof.
It's a deal accepted through weakness and desperation, furthered by cowardice. It's a position that claims many people, willing but never eager to do something awful just to get by. It's clear he's not fond of what he's done, but he's scared to come clean. Not without some help from his star pupil and a guilty conscience. This story paints Curio as a curious case among his peers. He is the first and one of the only Cappies to have ever done something dastardly with any amount of willingness behind it. Every other time the Cappies act evil, it's always because they aren't aware of what they're doing, or aren't actually involved and are allowing it to continue through their inaction. But Curio is directly responsible for this deed, knows what he did, and is planning to continue as long as DDD keeps up his end of the bargain. Compare this to his second most noteworthy appearance, Mummy's Madness, where he is possessed for basically the entire episode. And after being snapped out of it, tries his best to seal Mummies away again. He makes it all frustrating by continuing to anxiously dodge any attempt to publicly hold him accountable, but this time he has no control, no motive, no stake in the pot. Perhaps this trait is indicative of his more mature and smart standing. For him to participate in a scheme must mean something pretty big is happening, something he is more than likely aware of. And yet, his will is weak. He doesn't have what it takes to be bold about his actions, or even to address them at all. He has no true evil in him. He has no confidence in the justice of what he's done. And for as long as it continues without recourse, he will still fuss and fret over it all. And in the end, not only does he expose the king for being the subordinative despot he is, he also aids in the fight against the D&D Stone, a valiant effort from a man no one would expect to tip his bone brush in the ring. And that is all of them. Every named Cappy in town, every Cappy with an ounce of substance to their identity. We've learned quite a lot about these people, good and bad, but those were all on individual levels, and individual accolades hardly do any lifting when as a collective, everyone still lacks a brain. Just because the mayor is a sweet husband doesn't mean he's automatically absolved of his blatant endorsement of Waddle Dee slavery. That's why I've saved my biggest point of leverage for last. And to introduce my point, I'll ask you to think of the stupidest scene in Cappy history. If you're a regular hater of the Cappies, you probably already know what I'm talking about, but if you aren't, it's still probably pretty easy to figure out if you've watched the show. The beginning half of Cappy Town Down is easily the single biggest point of contention against the Cappies. I never hear any discussion about them that doesn't mention this scene or any of the dozens of scenes like it. Looking at you, Watermelon Felon. This episode starts with all of Cappytown being leveled in a Destroyer carpet bombing, reducing the entire city to cinders and craters. Even though Kirby destroyed the death machine, he didn't do it fast enough to save the city. It's a classic superhero trope. You did everything right, but you weren't fast enough. And now we're all mad at you, even though you were just trying your best. And right on cue, as everyone huddles around the burnt stump of the tree in town square, they all turn to Kirby and ridicule him.
When your ship crashed, we welcomed you to Cappytown, and now we're paying for it, Kirby.
Yeah, we lost everything because of you.
It was a mistake to let you live here.
Maybe it's time for you to move on.
Yeah, this is all your fault, Kirby.
There is rage, there is sadness, heartbreak, shock, and desperation. Their voices all quiver, helpless and angry and confused. And they believe Kirby is to blame for everything they're seeing, the everything they no longer have. Now why? Why would these people react this way towards Kirby? I've said before, why is my favorite single word question, and I'll ask it until my dying days. Why would the Cappies turn on Kirby, even when he did everything right and save the day? Think about it. No. Better. Think like a Cappy. Your entire city just got leveled to the ground in a massive intergalactic bombing run. Everyone you know no longer has a home, and the idea of getting everything back will take months, if not years, of continuous, laborious time and effort. If you can even handle the grief of how much you've lost, the idea of starting over is even worse. You look around you, and you see everyone you've ever known, crying, mourning, standing in shock, unable to address you, never once returning your gaze, their eyes returning the light of the fires and the edges of the rubble. Your neighbors all have to reconcile with this reality just as much as you do, and some of them have already lost all hope, or potentially something or someone far worse. As far as you know, your community will never be the same. And because of what? Some massive spaceship? Well, where did the spaceship come from? You don't know! It's not even worth it to question. It's already gone. You can't be mad at something that's already gone. So what can you be upset at? Kirby is the only thing that can come to mind. You can't be upset at the king. He's never had this kind of power before. And if he did, what was stopping him from waiting until now to finally strike? You can't be upset at whatever nebulous entity could have been controlling that saucer, because what can you possibly do about that? It would be useless. Besides, they're only attacking because of Kirby. With the knowledge you have, and all other compounding factors exhausted, Kirby is the most logical choice. You can't just be mad at nothing. You have to be mad at someone. Someone has to answer for everything you're seeing, everything you're experiencing. And if you didn't bother to participate in this metaphor, you'll be looking at my avatar and thinking I'm insane. At the outset, these things are obvious. For 97 episodes now, it's been the same villain since the start. Nightmare Enterprises. That's a no-brainer. But it's easier to blame something tangible and local than something they think is nebulous and distant. This is an intended feeling. This gut-wrenching frustration. This moment sought to put the viewer in the shoes of an activist. Someone who knows why things are the way they are and has to sit there and explain for the 100th time their reasoning why this nebulous governing force is the reason for the cost of eggs being so ludicrously high. because people never truly internalize it. They hear about a shadow government, and they think they have no say in the matter. They can't do anything. And when you feel helpless, you'll turn to anything for even a crumb of relief, even if you're wrong for doing so. None of these villagers are perfect people. They'll go about their lives being awful in ways they can't see. But that's true of everyone, isn't it? We're all evil in ways that we can't see to someone out there. And everyone will inevitably fall into an evil line of thinking if they're not properly informed. The pitfalls of evil are everywhere, and they're easy to fall into. But to err is human, and you will continue to err for as long as you remain out of the loop. Until you are told, shown, or what have you, you will have no idea that something you have done is wrong. And even if you have been told countless times, it's hard to remember something so small when faced with something so soul-crushing. So I don't blame them at all. Believe it or not, they were doing pretty well up until this point, all things considered. The thousands of running continuities in this show tend to get muddy at certain times, and so even in later episodes, the Cappies can be dumber than a box of rocks. But they are trying, and they are getting better, and that's what's important. But they won't stay that way without outside help. The Cappies are a tale of the perils of fighting against a society that always moves one step forward and 2 steps back. It has never been a fun fight, it has never been easy, and it has never been more important. And it has never been a problem exclusive to the realm of fantasy. Even now, I see cultures that used to be full of acceptance and love fall back to the wayside of discrimination and hatred, like nothing had been done, despite all the progress we once had. There was a tangible sense of camaraderie, sensibility, an idea that most people understood the core beliefs that we had been fighting for all of our collective lives. And yet, I turn my back, and they begin again the awful cycle of pointless infighting, developing prejudices, and clambering to the hope that one day there will be some meaningful minority by which I may be able to discriminate against without consequence or judgment, that there may be a label that I can call myself that will absolve me of any wrongdoing. It's heartbreaking. There's no better example of this than Curio's advice to Tiff near the middle of episode 28.
Telling the truth can be a very lonely business, Tiff, especially when nobody wants to hear it.
And once again near the end.
The danger inherent in learning a lesson is that what is readily apparent at the outset becomes obscure as time passes, and what was once clear inexorably fades from memory.
Note the completely different line here between the sub and the dub. Sub Curio speaks to the fact that good deeds often go unrecognized by the people it saved. And the worst part is that his cynical remark isn't even just a snide comment. It's the truth. There used to be a massive hole in the ozone layer, a problem the show itself later tackles. It's better now, but people on the street will tell you that it's completely fixed, and everyone who was worried about the ozone layer was an idiot, because it was never really a problem at all. This line of thinking completely ignores the efforts of the hundreds, if not thousands, of climate scientists, workplace regulators, and everyday people who voted and signed bills that slowly worked to improve the ozone layer's condition over multiple decades. It's still not fully repaired, it'll take multiple decades more to get there, but people have not stopped working to improve it, and there are ways that we can help. That is what Curio is referring to. The people who help are often ignored, and their efforts go unrecognized. This was also what happened with the year 2000 problem, or Y2K. Hundreds of engineers and computer experts worked throughout the last 2 months of 1999 to make absolutely sure that nothing would fuck up once the year incremented. Their efforts are ignored too, because the crazies said the world would end and it didn't. And no one bothers to ask why it didn't happen before writing everyone off as overdramatic lunatics. It's hard to say why this line was altered, even harder than the last few I brought up. You totally would have had enough time to say this line and stay in sync with the original audio, but this new line is so much longer. You can even hear how fast Maddie had to talk to cram it all in there. But there's a purpose to this new line that, while only tangentially related to the original text, conveys a different idea that I think was more apt for the show as a whole, rather than just this one episode or scene. Let me read that for you, but slower. The danger inherent in learning a lesson is that what is readily apparent at the outset becomes obscure as time passes, and what was once clear inexorably, or in other words, inevitably, fades from memory. Essentially, Curio is saying that no matter how important a message is, people are going to forget it if they don't hear it, or see it, or otherwise consume it from time to time. It doesn't matter how basic or obvious it is, people have to consume it for them to understand, and the longer they go without consuming it, the less they'll internalize it. And this was a message delivered before the late digital age, a time where a message like this is arguably the most important it's ever been. We have the freedom of the internet at our fingertips at all times. It has become a necessity for work, for leisure, for life. We can choose what messages we consume, at what time, with whoever we desire. We may even be showing a message we deem important to people we care about. That's what I'm doing right now. But because we have that freedom, we also have the freedom to choose what messages we don't engage with. A freedom that certain parties are trying to exploit and claim for themselves. There may very well come a time when an important message is no longer able to be seen by the people who need to hear it, not just by it being censored, but also by it being deleted and unpreserved, or it just not being talked about anymore. Puritans blocking sensitive content that speaks to the human condition, a beloved message lost to time due to creator dissatisfaction or disappearance, an inspiring display that receives no media coverage because it just isn't worth talking about anymore. Everyone knows about this now. I don't have to talk about it. It's common knowledge. You never know how meaningful a message can be until you hear it again. And sometimes you may never get another chance. And you'll forget. You'll forget what it meant. You'll forget how it's told. You'll forget what it could do to anyone who hears it. And people will forget what it did to the world. And everything will suddenly begin to revert. All of this is in service of the fundamental idea that the most important choice you can make in a crisis is where you choose to direct your emotions. What you choose to do with the messages you have kept close to your chest, if you remember them. And that is ultimately what makes the opinion of the Cappies so easy to sway. At the end of the day, all they want to know is who they should be angry at. A very, very common motivation. You've likely seen it yourself, if not directly fallen for it. The message that Right Back At Ya tried to teach you is that this is something worth fighting against. That your neighbors, no matter how stubborn, no matter how ignorant, no matter how obnoxious and hopeless they seem, are worth fighting for. Are worth being told the same stories and messages over and over again. No matter how many times the Cappies bought into whatever bullshit DDD was spouting, they were always reminded of his tyranny in some way. Even when the situation was at its most dire, at its most hopeless, things would always turn out okay. But that's only because there were people out there who didn't buy into it and are willing to fight for the good of the world. And you should too. But there's something equally as pressing that feeds into the natural Cappy instinct. Another compounding factor as to why they continue to regress, fall back on old habits, and continue their reactionary ways of conflict resolution. They are all cowards. Midway into the episode, after everyone has been called into Battleship Halberd, they are all given a choice. It doesn't seem like much of a choice, but they are given it nonetheless. They can choose to stay home, or they can choose to join the fight, as a crew member or as combatant. And all of them choose to stay home, even as their home continues to be leveled to the ground, even as Castle Dedede now faces the same bombardment. They clamber back to the life they know, even when it no longer exists. None of them are fighters. Mennonite says as much himself. A backwoods town like this isn't capable of training soldiers. The Cappies are complacent, non-combative, and would rather just return to their normal way of life instead of taking on the powers that be. And they would have stayed there too, if not for the returning Kit Cosmos, who inspires them to return with a big speech and the emotional MacGuffin that is Kirby. With his words, the townsfolk are willing to turn tail a second time and join the fight. Minus a few. Someone has to rebuild the village after all. And this, coupled with the earlier scene at Town Square, cemented the idea in my mind that the Cappies, for how stupid they are, were made that way for a reason. And for as much as I dislike it, I have to respect it. Because it is the most accurate, in-your-face depiction of this phenomena that I have seen in my entire life. I do not have a name for it. No name I can dream up feels fitting enough, but what I do have is a tiny message of my own. It's a message that comes from American writer Robert J. Hanlon, who submitted a heuristic of reasoning to the Murphy's Law book series written by Arthur Block. Its official name is Hanlon's Razor, a philosophical razor meant to shave off unlikely explanations or unnecessary conclusions. You may have heard about it from Occam. Hanlon's Razor says, "Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity." None of the Cappies are doing what they do with any kind of malicious intent. Often, it's for their own benefit somehow. You've slighted me, so I'll slight you back. An eye for an eye. A shared sorrow is half a sorrow. Because when your natural emotional state is disrupted, when something goes wrong and leaves you upset or scared, the first thing everyone will look to do is try to find some way to get their emotions back to normal. It will almost always be a stupid action to take, but at the time, you don't care how it's done. It's what you do when you realize what you've done that determines your character. No one is perfect, but also, no one is impossible. You can turn the heel of anyone and everyone. Some will take more effort, some will need very specific things. Sometimes it will be something so small that moves so many. But it is never impossible. Mob mentality is frustrating, stubbornness always complicates things, and everyone has different levels of tolerance and patience. But when the time comes, and everything finally matters, everything finally falls into place, you will be surprised at how many faces show up to be involved. Even possibly because of something you said. So don't be so quick to write off the Cappies as idiots. They are. But so are a lot of us, including me. And you can surely imagine how long a lot of us had to spend being idiots before we could become who we are after the fact. If you still don't believe me on this front, then I think it's time to draw the final card in my deck. Prediction Predicament Part 2. Cappytown's first conversation with complete and total annihilation. The plot of this entire double-episode saga revolves around the town's unifying desire to have a playground constructed for the children of the town. A desire Dedede has continuously denied, neglected, or otherwise refused. Part 1 was more directly centered around Mabel's involvement in the matter, which I already covered, kinda, and the resulting smear campaign spurred on by the king. But Part 2 shifts its focus to revolve around the actual source of Dedede's nightmares. some kind of latent clairvoyant vision of an impending stellar object on course to destroy the entire planet. Phantom Star Girath. It's not supposed to crash for 1,000 years more, but Nightmare Enterprises would be delighted to speed that process up. By the time we check in next, the asteroid is set on a new death course that will complete in only a few short days. DDD laughs it off, however, building himself a golden statue in the town square, even as the asteroid draws nearer. As the world around them grows ever more disturbed by the asteroid's looming approach, the Cappies all consult Kaboom, who in no uncertain terms directly confirms their fears, assuring them of the end of the world. Faced with a fact-checked time limit of 48 hours, the Cappies unanimously agree on one thing. They return home, with their loved ones in hand. Even as Tiff begs them not to give up, crying out that there's still time, they all walk briskly back to their normal, everyday lives, with the assurance that they've all lived well. There is a clock above their heads, and they have already assumed that there is nothing they can do. Like all Doomsday scenarios, there are 3 angles to see, which I will put through the lens of a very conveniently made Splatoon 3 Splatfest event titled What Would You Do at the World's End? The 3 teams given were Same Old, Shivers Team, which operated under the principle that the time you have left should be cherished, spent with those you care about, and aware that everything will be your last, making it the most important. Bucket List, Fry's Team, which sees the end of days as an opportunity to go wild and crazy with everything you've always wanted to do but never could. The time we have left is just enough, if managed well, to incorporate a lifetime of experiences, making it the most important. And finally, Save the Day, Big Man's Team, which directly opposed the Doom and incentivized its negation, prevention, or escape at all costs. The time we have left is strict but manageable, and with enough hope and perseverance, we could all make it out alive, making it the most important. We can place Tiff and company very firmly on the Save the Day team, and with a bit of stretching, DDD fits nicely on Team Bucket List. I would hardly call skating around in your castle courtyard very life-fulfilling, but it's his bucket list and he gets to put whatever he wants on it. The Cappies have firmly placed themselves on Team Same Old. And now, I understand that a purely hypothetical scenario asked to a shooter fan base of mostly kids and preteens is not the most scientific analysis, but if we look at the numbers, Team Same Old and Team Bucket List were within 20 points of each other by the end, with Save the Day coming in at a staggering last place with only 60 points. Does that sound familiar at all? Maybe you'd rather me tell you about the player count on each team? Well, I would if I had a concrete number for it. Player data isn't exactly easy to come by, and the only number I really have to go off of is the votes percentage, which is technically also the player count statistic. According to those numbers, 50% of all participants were on Team Bucket List, while 29% were on Same Old and almost 21% on Save the Day. That is less than a quarter of the total number of people who participated in the Splatfest on Team Save the Day. And this does nothing to tell you how many people picked a team and then never played. I know this because that's exactly what I did. I was losing a lot of steam to play the game around the time of the Splatfest. Anyway, we've been talking about Splatoon for a long time now, and I'm sure you get what I'm trying to say with it. Not many people believe they have what it takes to save the world, should a Doomsday event ever crop up. And in the case of the Cappies, who we know are not particularly daring people who take risks and live dangerously, the idea of creating, much less following a bucket list, does not interest them. Living their last 2 days in as much comfort as they can makes more than a world of sense. However, there is not much comfort to be had. The proximity of the asteroid causes the Boomaduma volcano to erupt, threatening to blanket Cappies Town in lava. The citizens are forced to evacuate to the safe, elevated confines of Castle Deity. Professor Curio looks back on his town, a deep sorrow overcoming him. After bidding farewell to his hometown, he finds himself unable to tear his eyes away, and Chief Bookham is forced to drag him back onto the path of safety. With every Cappy now holed up in the king's castle, they stare longingly at Gareth, waiting. Everything they know is going to be erased. Every memory they've ever made, every face they've ever seen, and every bit of land they've ever touched, it's all over. And for all they know, they are powerless to stop it. All they think to do is turn to their loved ones, their neighbors, and confess to every bad thing they've ever done, no matter how insignificant.
Iro, the last time we played hide and seek, I kept peeking. Forgive me?
Or how disgusting.
Sorry from Ladylike. Once at my restaurant, I accidentally fed you something I shouldn't have.
Huh? Something you shouldn't have?
It was.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Or how scandalous.
Forgive me, Melvin.
For what, Doctor?
Once I confused you with another patient, and I yanked out your back molars.
So that's why corning the cob was so difficult.
And it's this moment of pure, unbridled humanity that sticks with me. More than any of the awful things this town has done. The last act of a doomed people is to seek out the people they've wronged and try to make up for it with the little bit of time they have left. It's endearing enough to turn the heels of Escargoon and eventually Deity. And if it can convince those two fucking idiots to do anything good, that alone speaks volumes. This scene, along with another one very shortly after that I will have a lot more to say about in a tangentially related video all about DDD, is one of a plethora of emotional moments in the show that have enough impact to sting even with dozens of repeat viewings. This is not a group of juvenile, implicit naysayers who reject change in all forms out of principle. This is not a group of cold-hearted heathens who have never known such a thing as empathy or compassion. This is a group of people. Vulnerable, imperfect people. They believe in the goodwill of those around them. They believe in forgiveness, in camaraderie, in the love of all things good and proper. However, it is unfortunate that the threat of complete annihilation is basically mandatory to get them to admit it, to practice it, and to mean it with their whole chest. Society has its ways of keeping people nasty. By prioritizing the self above all else, the forces of love, compassion, and forgiveness are snuffed out. Every Cappy lives for themselves and no one else. They make decisions that benefit them, no matter who else has to suffer. And those who get slighted, they just have to suck it up. Because it happens to everyone. That is a uniquely societal trait. A stupid societal trait. To complain about a Cappy is the same as complaining about a coworker you barely talk to, who keeps doing things you don't like, despite all the notes you keep leaving out. Or this woman who is making a fuss in the supermarket, demanding a higher-up over something ultimately pointless. Or this family who drove super slow on the freeway and caused you to miss an exit. All in different ways, these people all said the exact same thing. I only really care about myself right now. But it's important to acknowledge that you have absolutely no idea what this person might be going through. Your coworker might be working through a breakup and just wants things done the way they usually are. The supermarket woman might have just gotten back from a school meeting and now has to deal with their kid being suspended for a week. that family might have been on their way to a funeral. You can't possibly know every facet of a person's life, but acknowledging the possibility of a silent struggle is better for all parties involved, even if the possibility does not excuse or justify how their actions affected you. It challenges the status quo. It eliminates the selfishness present in us all. The Cappies do not understand this, and so the cycle repeats, ever and ever winding down, dragging everyone into the whirlpool of closeted individuality. And the only cure is compassion, empathy, the willingness to look at your neighbor, even when it hurts, and understand them. Many people in the show encourage this line of thinking on a case-by-case basis. But if you ask me, there's no better cure to Cappytown's individualist plague than the sensation of a collaborative victory, the triumph over evil, and the warmth that comes from the dawn of a new era.
Maybe Cappytown isn't too exciting, but I wouldn't want anybody to do a single thing to change it.
Wow, how long have I been in here? Fuck. Okay, I'll make this quick. Just the same as every video like this that I make, I can't force you to like any of these characters, and that's not really my goal. It's pretty unrealistic to assume that a paraphrased recap of some random episode is enough to make people side with the useless policeman character. I know my videos have had a pretty decent track record when it comes to changing people's minds on things, you know, when YouTube decides to actually pump my shit through the fucking algorithm worth a damn, but this video is different. It's more about the lost message of the Cappies, the neglected wisdom of their intentionally flawed ways of thinking and living that challenges you to find it in your own life and work against it. The angle that they deserve to be viewed from, which, when you really think about it, is not very different from the current viewing angle at all. The Cappies suck. I still stand by that, even after everything I said. But I don't have to go against that when I say how much I love them regardless. These 2 points can coexist. That is my thesis. I hate to indoctrinate everyone here into quote-unquote hippie culture, but we all need to be more compassionate to one another, more understanding of those around us. Gatekeeping your heart is the most effective soul killer, and the people in power are trying everything they can to make that option seem more appealing than it is. When you fall into that trap, you are no better than the metaphorical Cappies you despise in your life, because they are out there. So, spread the love. Show it to someone you wouldn't otherwise. You'll make fast friends, and you might even direct a few minds back onto the right path. It's what Kirby would do. Has done. I mean, for God's sake, this whole series runs on the power of friendship and love. It's the reason I end every video with some declaration of love. Because I love each and every one of you so very much. Come on, you know it's not over yet. I gotta talk about this video's soundtrack. It'll be out on Bandcamp either as this video goes live or sometime after, and on YouTube as a full album upload sometime within the next week. This one took a lot more out of me, and as such, I think these are some of my best works so far. I'll also be releasing some retooled songs that were meant for my massive deep dive project that Content ID completely fucked over. Nothing too drastic, but some of them definitely needed, I'll tell you that much up front. And also, you know, I need a good reason for people to actually listen to and maybe buy my stuff on Bandcamp. It's all free regardless, though. No need to pay unless you want to and you want to support me. It's finally over. The end card is here, 5 months in the making. I'm not quite done with this project. I'm also contemplating making a behind-the-scenes style bonus episode where I talk about all the stuff that I wanted more people to be aware of, or stuff that didn't make the final cut, and things like that. I'm still writing the script, but I'm also contemplating a live stream. It's a very flexible idea. I know what I want to talk about, but how I do that is still up in the air. So I'm looking to the comments for suggestions or questions or anything of the sort. Think of it like a Q&A before the big 1K Q&A. I want to know what you guys want me to talk about. If you're not interested in that, though, you might be interested in my next big project. The next video I work on is going to be about a fan game idea I've been developing for a while now. Then I'll talk about Amazing Mirror, then I'll talk about some other anime-related topic, and I haven't planned out anything past that yet. But regardless, I want to end this off by saying the typical YouTuber schlock. If you like what I do, want to see more of it, yada yada, hit the sub bell, conditioning, blah blah. I'm really close to 1K and I have big plans. You get the idea. I love you all. More great things are coming. Stay tuned, and I'll see you around.